My people, for decades, Africa has rightly called out the West for exploiting her resources from colonial plunder to today's extractive contracts. But here is the bitter truth. Corruption doesn't arrive by parachute. It needs willing hands on the ground, and some of Africa's deepest wounds are self-inflicted. Real corruption lives here, in ministries, procurement boards, and local councils, perpetuated by the very officials charged with protecting the public purse. It steals billions meant for schools, hospitals, for clean water and infrastructure. It turns manufacturers into pipelines for graft. It diverts funds from the roads that should link farmers to markets, from the manufacturing hubs that could provide jobs, from the clinics that could save lives. This is not foreign interference. This is homegrown betrayal. Between 2000 and 2015, Africa lost an estimated $836 billion through illicit financial flows. Today, the bleeding is about $89 billion a year. That's more than the entire continent receives in foreign direct investment and nearly 5 times the annual aid that Africa gets. Put simply, Africa has enough money to fund its own development, if only she could stop bleeding it. Greetings, friends. Welcome back to my channel. I'm Dr. Christy Agawu. In my work on African development, I often say that if we're going to talk about aid and foreign exploitation, we must also be willing to look in the mirror. Africa is not only being robbed from the outside. Too often, she's looted from within by her own leaders, her officials, and the politically connected elites. Today, I want us to speak frankly about one of the most painful wounds we inflict on ourselves, corruption from within. Its scale is staggering. These cases of corruption weren't the work of foreign interference or outside forces. They were conceived, they were executed, and they were protected from within. A form of homegrown terrorism, not waged with bombs or guns, but with pens, contracts, and calculated betrayal. Officials entrusted with the nation's resources joined forces with private companies in elaborate kickback schemes, signing off on inflated contracts, approving phantom projects, and greenlighting payments for services that never materialized. The loot is split, the paper trail buried or at least attempted, and the public left with broken promises. These are not cases of negligence. They are orchestrated raids on the treasury, carried out in broad daylight by those sworn to protect it. And before we dive in, I extend a warm welcome to all our new subscribers. I'm so glad you're here. If you've been with us for a while, thank you for sticking around. And if you're new, you've joined a community that digs deep into Africa's most pressing stories. So I say welcome. Let's begin in Ghana, where the Office of the Special Prosecutor, the Economic and Organized Crime Office, and the Attorney General have exposed endless corruption scandals, millions lost to shady contracts, inflated procurements, and outright theft. The committee set up by President Mahama to recover all loot reviewed 36 high-profile cases, including the National Cathedral, Power Distribution Services, and the Bank of Ghana's $250 million corporate office. The audit uncovered $20.49 billion in potentially recoverable funds, plus $702.8 million lost through underpriced land allocations, making a total of $21.19 billion. That's 7 times what Ghana went for cap in hand to the IMF for in 2022. The truth, Ghana had the money all along, tucked away in the pocket of some of its own thieving leaders. Now, Ghana is just one chapter. Across Africa, the script repeats. Nigeria's losses have been on an even grander scale. In February 2014, Central Bank Governor Lamido Sanusi alleged that $20 billion in oil revenue vanished between January 2012 and July 2013, a matter of 19 months under President Goodluck Jonathan. The missing billions were not an anomaly, but part of a much longer and larger pattern. Between 1960 and 1999, successive regimes are estimated to have stolen roughly $400 billion, money that could have transformed infrastructure, education, and healthcare in Africa's most populous nation. Let's skip down to South Africa. In 2016, the state capture saga under President Jacob Zuma revealed how a private family, the Guptas, allegedly manipulated large arms of the state. They are thought to have pocketed up to $7 billion, while wider systemic looting cost the country an estimated $17 billion across institutions. The deeper cost was economic stagnation, growth rates that were shaved by an estimated 4% each year, translating into $16 billion in lost output annually, making a staggering $140 billion over a decade. Tiny Gambia wasn't spared in this fraud spree. President Yahya Jammeh, who ruled for over 2 decades starting in 1994, is believed to have looted up to $1 billion through a web of state-linked shell companies, including the National Petroleum Company headed by his own son, Edward Gomez Jammeh. This was in a country where annual GDP hovers around just $2 billion. Skip over to Mozambique. Mozambique's hidden debt scandal exploded in April 2016. More than $2 billion in secret state-backed loans signed between 2013 and 2014 under President Armando Guebuza were siphoned off through sham maritime and security contracts. Then Finance Minister Manuel Chang personally took $7 billion in bribes to push the deal through. The fallout was brutal. IMF aid was frozen, the economy tanked, and ordinary Mozambicans were shackled with decades of debt for projects that barely existed outside of paperwork and kickbacks. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, former Prime Minister Matata Pomvo, who served from 2012 to 2016, was convicted in 2025 for embezzling, $245 million from a failed agricultural project that had been billed as a route to food security in the country. The money vanished, the farms were never built, and hunger remained a daily reality for millions in the country. Now the thing is, corruption isn't just at the top. Middle managers and bureaucrats run their own lucrative side hustles with public funds. Now, in Nigeria, the fuel subsidy system became a goldmine for fraud between 2009 and 2011. Middlemen in the oil distribution chain, aided by complicit officials, billed the government for fuel that never reached the pumps. Entire shipments were fictitious, yet the payments were real, draining more than $6 billion from public coffers while motorists queued for hours at empty petrol stations. In Zambia, fertilizer, a lifeline for smallholder farmers, was turned into a political slush fund. In 2015, procurement officers and politically connected suppliers colluded to inflate prices by more than 60%, roughly adding $40 million to the bill. The overpayment didn't just waste funds. It meant fewer farmers got the inputs they needed, deepening rural food insecurity. And in Ghana, the rot took the form of names on a payroll. Between 2018 and 2024, the National Service Scheme paid salaries to almost 92,000 ghost employees, non-existent recruits conjured by insiders. And according to Attorney General Dominic Ayine, the scheme drained over $53 million. It was theft by spreadsheet, executed without a single shot fired, but with devastating impact on a program designed to give young graduates their first foothold in the labor market. So we have presidents and ministers of state, agency heads with their hands deep in the public purse, grabbing billions with impunity and siphoning off much-needed funds with zero accountability. Meanwhile, the poor man who steals $10 faces swift and brutal punishment. We need to ask, is this African justice? This is not just theft. It is the silent collapse of opportunity. Every dollar stolen is a classroom never built, a clinic without medicine, a borehole that runs dry, factories unbuilt. It means unemployed graduates roaming the streets, and rural mothers walking miles for water, and patients dying on hospital benches. Corruption and illicit financial flows bleed Africa of over $88 billion every single year, nearly 4% of the continent's GDP. That's more than the total annual health spending of all African governments combined. It's a ton more than Africa receives in official development assistance. Over just one decade, that's $880 billion, enough to build more than 2,000 large-scale hospitals, electrify every village in sub-Saharan Africa, and finance a high-speed railway network from Cairo to Cape Town. Even a single year's loss, $88 billion, could construct over 1,000 modern manufacturing plants capable of processing Africa's raw materials domestically, and build nearly 300 utility-scale solar farms or 150 hydroelectric dams, enough to transform the continent's energy supply. And tens of thousands of kilometers of paved roads and freight rail lines, slashing transport costs for farmers and factories. Instead, the money flows into offshore bank accounts, luxury villas in Dubai and London, and private jets that serve no public good. The real cost is not just in money, but in the industrial leap we never make. The factories never built, the ports never expanded, and jobs never created. And perhaps the worst cost of all is invisible: the slow death of public trust, the normalization of decay and theft, and the quiet acceptance that this is just how things are. Once that mindset takes hold, it's far harder to reverse than to prevent. Here is the truth. Africa's future isn't only stolen by outsiders, it is looted from within. And only we, you, me, and all of us can stop it. We must demand transparency, prosecute without fear or favor, strip stolen assets, protect whistleblowers, because every stolen billion is a power plant never built, a railway never laid, a factory never opened. We cannot build tomorrow while protecting today's thieves. The question isn't, can we afford to fight corruption? The real question is, can we afford not to? Africa has enough. What she lacks is enough outrage. Friends, if you believe Africa deserves better, hit like, share, and subscribe. Spread this message, because silence is the best friend of corruption. Till the next time.